Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld, and today we're taking an in-depth look at the new Naval Strike Sniper Rifle, the SR338. The SR338 is basically a cross between a DMR and a sniper rifle, and is available only to the Recon class. Unlike a bolt action, it's able to fire in semi-automatic mode, and unlike a DMR, it's able to attach high-powered optics. It's unfortunately copped a lot of criticism over the last few weeks because many people think it doesn't perform as well as either a DMR or a bolt action. But the fact is, despite its similarities to both weapon classes, it's a unique beast in its own right, and in this video I hope I'll be able to show you that it's really not as bad as people think. But first, let's take a look at the weapon's stats. Like I said before, the SR338 is halfway between a DMR and a bolt action, and its stats fall somewhere in between the two weapon types. The SR338 deals slightly more damage than the average DMR and slightly less than a bolt action. It deals a maximum of 50 damage out to 12.5 meters, which drops off to its minimum damage of 38 at 150 meters. This translates into a 3-bullet kill at most ranges, but unlike a DMR, it can actually kill with one shot to the head or 2 body shots at point blank range. More often than not, you'll probably need 3 bullets to kill your target, but being that it takes a lot longer to reach its minimum damage than a DMR, you'll find yourself picking up quite a few more 1 and 2 bullet kills on players that have already taken some damage. Like a bolt action, it has a 0 base ADS spread, which means that except for bullet drop, your shots will land exactly where you aim them. The SR338 is also slightly more accurate on the move than the average bolt action rifle, with a moving ADS spread of 1. Like a DMR, it fires in semi-automatic mode, but its rate of fire at 150 RPM is considerably slower than even the slowest firing DMR. This probably isn't a bad thing anyway, because the SR338 spread increase per shot at 0.6 makes this weapon ineffective when spamming even slightly. The only effective way to use this weapon is to take your time with your shots, which will also pretty much negate the weapon's relatively high recoil. Another nice aspect of the SR338 is that it reloads much faster than most bolt action rifles, with an empty reload of 2.6 seconds and a tactical reload of 2.3 seconds. The speed of your reload with this weapon is pretty important because it only has an 11 round capacity, which is almost half that of an average DMR. This isn't a big problem as long as you're being accurate with the weapon, but just bear in mind it doesn't give you a big margin for error. The biggest drawback to this weapon is its relatively low bullet speed, which at 500 meters per second is only just a little bit faster than the M40A5. This increases bullet drop and means that you'll have to lead your target a little bit more, which can make hitting long range targets a lot more difficult. It's not something that you can't get used to, but it's a little frustrating. The weapon's higher damage output and accuracy makes up for it to some degree though, and it's not as frustrating to use this weapon as the Scar HSV for example, which also has a muzzle velocity of 500 meters per second. So the question many of you are probably asking about this weapon is how does it compare to the DMRs and the bolt actions? Well, like I said before, it's a completely different animal altogether. It's going to be able to reach out and kill at slightly longer ranges than the long range DMRs like the SVD and the Mark 11, but it's also going to be able to take out targets quicker than a bolt action like the M40A5 would at mid range. All I can say is that with this weapon, if you treat it like a DMR or a bolt action, you're not using it right. This weapon has obviously been designed to make use of the higher powered optics, but in my opinion, anything beyond a 4x ACOG scope is far too much for this rifle. When using this gun at sniper rifle ranges with a higher powered scope, this weapon is a hit marker machine, but by the same token, trying to use this weapon in close quarters is bound to get you killed. I'd normally try and take out targets with a DMR at anything between 50 and 100 meters, and with a bolt action, I'd normally be trying to engage my targets at more than 100 to 150 meters. The SR338 fits pretty much right in between these ranges, and while I'm sure many shots would feel easier with a DMR or a bolt action, you can tell many shots are better suited to the SR338. I found that once I got used to this weapon, its kills per minute stat was about on par with my most used DMRs, and its accuracy was still on par with my bolt actions. Also, unlike playing with DMRs, you're able to keep a bit more distance between you and the enemy, so my KD in most rounds I played with this gun most of the time was around 3. So basically what this boils down to is that this weapon is as effective as a DMR, but it can shoot at longer range. Therefore, it rivals the faster firing bolt actions, and in my opinion, it's probably more useful in more situations. So as far as tactics go for this weapon, I found that putting myself in an aggressive sniper mindset was much more effective than a run and gun DMR mindset. It's a good idea to hang back and find some good points of elevation like you would with a bolt action, but at the same time you want to try and position yourself just that little bit closer. If you can find yourself a good position in the weapon sweet spot, you'll be able to take down targets much more effectively than you would be able to with a fast firing bolt action. But just be sure not to reach out too far though, because this weapon isn't a bolt action after all. In almost all cases, a head-on gunfight with an assault rifle or a carbine will end in your death, so don't expect the SR338 to occasionally pull you out of the fire like a DMR would. Like with any bolt action setup, you'll want to run with a fast firing pistol like the 93R for close quarters targets. It's best to try not to get into close quarters to begin with anyway, and like with any aggressive sniping playstyle, make sure that you use motion detectors and don't be afraid to relocate if you think an enemy has spotted you. So what attachments would I recommend for the SR338? Well, like I said before, the higher powered scopes are just not effective with this weapon. I've been running the rifle with an ACOG 4x scope, and I feel like this is the perfect scope for the weapon. This weapon won't kill with a headshot at long range, so as you'll be going for body shots most of the time anyway, you really don't need the extra magnification to line up headshots. Another important thing to remember is that because this gun is technically a sniper rifle, it uses bolt action attachments. This means that you won't have access to any of the grips, some of the barrel attachments, and the magnifier. Unfortunately, the bolt action attachments don't really do any favours for the SR338. This isn't a close quarters weapon, so the laser sight, flashlight and suppressor are probably going to do more harm than good. And being that you won't be taking extreme long shots with an ACOG sight, the rangefinder isn't that useful either. The bipod is the only other attachment worth running with this gun, as long as you're only using it sparingly. Bipodding in Battlefield 4 is a sure way of getting yourself sniped, so make sure that you're only using it when in cover or when you know you're out of sight. So to wrap up this review, all I can say is that I feel like a lot of the critics of this weapon haven't spent enough time using it. There's still a lot of critics of the DMRs, and as most of you probably realise, they're starting to prove a lot more effective than people first thought. The same goes for the SR338. I didn't like the SR338 to begin with either, but after getting a few service stars with it, I'm actually starting to like it a lot. The gun isn't perfect, but at least from my perspective, it's just as effective as a DMR and probably more effective than the fast firing bolt actions. Bear in mind this is coming from a PS4 player, so I wouldn't be surprised if PC players have a different opinion, considering it's a lot easier to land headshots with a bolt action using a mouse and keyboard. But anyway, if you haven't tried out this gun, don't let the bad reviews stop you from giving it a try. It's one of the few truly unique weapons in Battlefield 4, and if you can learn to master it, you'll get an experience you can't get with any other weapon. And that just about wraps it up. As always, if you like what you see, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. And if you haven't already, check out my other Battlefield 4 videos. I've got them all linked in a playlist in the description below. And if you have any suggestions for loadouts or weapons that you'd like me to take a look at on this channel, then let me know in the comments of this video or send me a tweet on Twitter at BillyEatWorld. But anyway guys, until next time, see you later and have a good one.